Are you ready to be connected? You're listening to the Insured Connection podcast by Pica Group, a pro assurance company, where we provide expert advice for your practice when you need it most. We connect you with industry leaders to discuss timely topics so you can listen, learn, and get back to caring for your patients. Now, let's connect.
Welcome back to the Insured Connection. I'm Dr. Krupa Patel, and today's episode is a special one in recognition of Women's History Month. In podiatric medicine and really across all of healthcare, we've seen a tremendous evolution in the role of women. More women are entering the profession, pursuing surgical training, leadership activities, leading practices, conducting research, and stepping into roles within our professional organizations. But today's conversation isn't just about representation, it's about impact. We'll be discussing the contributions of women in podiatry, the importance of mentorship and leadership development, and how we continue to support the next generation of physicians entering the profession. I'm really excited today to be joined by an incredible panel of women who are helping shape the future of podiatry. Before we dive in, I would love for each of you guys, Dr. Minhas, Dr. Richey, and Dr. Khavari, to just share a little bit about yourself and then about your role in podiatry today. I guess we'll start with you, Dr. Minhas.
Hi, thanks so much, Dr. Patel, for this wonderful opportunity. And I'm just so excited to be able to speak to the crowd today with this incredible panel. So thank you so much. My name is Dr. Sabrina Minhas. I am practicing in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm actually a clinical professor at the Temple University School of Podiatric Medicine, and I've been in practice now for almost 20 years.
Amazing. How about you, Dr. Richey?
Yeah, my name is Joanna Richey. I'm a clinical faculty and assistant professor at Midwestern University in Arizona. And as soon as you said that, Sabrina, I'm like, well, how long have I been in practice?
Yeah.
I think it's been, I'm on my PGY like 14 or 15 now. So lots of fun on this side of the career, I think.
Awesome. How about you, Dr. Khavari?
Thank you so much for having us here. I'm so excited for this conversation. I am in Dallas, Texas. I've been in practice since 2014. I'm in private practice and learning every day, learning how to expand, and just excited to be here and learn from all these amazing women here, but also share whatever knowledge I have.
We appreciate that. So I am actually practicing in New Jersey. I own a private practice and have been in practice for the last PGY 15 years. It has been quite the whirlwind, and I'm super excited to just have a conversation with you ladies about what you're seeing, what we can do, and how do we support our future colleagues. So let's start with kind of the bigger picture. Over the past couple of decades, we've seen a significant shift in the number of women entering podiatry school and residency programs. Now, I'm going to shoot this out to our panel. Like, what changes have you personally seen in the profession when it comes to the role of women in podiatry?
I'll start if you guys don't mind. I think there's a lot more representation of women across podiatry in academia as well as in residency programs. I think there's a lot more female residency directors than even when I was in residency. And when we look at faculty at the schools, I think there's a lot more female faculty and really great dynamic faculty. Might I add, at all of the schools that are now female. So definitely I see a lot more of that from when I was in school and when I started in podiatry.
How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I would just piggyback that same concept. I think I've seen more inclusion, and I do think that that's something that being female also opens you up to, is just wanting to be more inclusive of everyone, not just female perspectives, but wanting to help everyone have an opportunity to build the life that you want to live. And there's so much about podiatry that is appealing to women because you have this opportunity to still have a surgical practice, but have a little more autonomy over your life in terms of flexibility. And if you chose to spend other parts of your life outside of medicine, what that can look like. I think that's continued to draw more and more women.
100%. What about you, Lilly?
I think, and I see a lot more women in leadership positions. I'm part of the board here in Texas. And when I started, there was barely any women on the board. It was very male-oriented, male-dominant. And now I get so happy when I see residents that are graduating that are ready to take on more leadership roles. And they have the confidence to do so because there's other women on that board. And I see more women partaking in education, clinical care. They're innovating, and really getting a good name for podiatry as far as collaborating with other specialties as well. So it's very exciting to see that transformation from a very male dominant field to now be having more women in schools in our profession.
I agree 100%. I mean, all the points you guys say, I would double down on all of them. Do you think that, let's say 15, 20 years ago, when we first came out into practice or out of residency, did you make those opportunities for yourself to get into leadership positions, or was there some barriers that you had to go through? And if you're willing to share any of those stories, I'd be happy to entertain.
Sure.
Go ahead, Lily.
For me, I think I had to kind of make myself available for those positions. It wasn't readily available. It was always, I was a residency where I had mostly male co-residents. And so to be kind of considered for even a chief resident in that position, I was never the first one to be asked. So it was like I had to work a little bit harder to show my interest and say, hey, I'm up for this too. And leading into that, getting into practice, and I was part of a group practice at first. Same thing for partnership, opportunities and just our salaries. Definitely there's a difference. And if you don't speak up for yourself, I think unfortunately, hopefully it's less now, but you used to be taken advantage of a little bit. As far as leadership positions, I think no, first roles that I took on had to be kind of pursued by me. And as you start doing more and you kind of prove yourself in a way, then more doors seem to open up. But initially, no, I think I had to work a little harder for those positions and kind of just be like, hey, I'm here. I'm excited about it. Here's what I have to offer, and kind of go from there.
What about you, Sabrina? Did you face some of that in your
Yeah,
involvement?
I mean, definitely I can understand what Lily was saying. So when I graduated from my residency, some of the doctors that trained me were involved with PPMA, the Pennsylvania Podiatric Medical Association, and I was chief resident, but again, I'm not sure if I was the first choice, but I ended up becoming chief resident. Everyone thought I was pretty bossy at that point, so I guess they decided I could do some good with that. Anyways, some of the doctors that I trained with surgically at some offsites, they were involved with PPMA and they encouraged me. They were like, you know what, I really think that, we like what you have to say. I like that you're committed to podiatry. I like that you're good with the students. Like, why don't you try to become a delegate to the PPMA House of Delegates? And I had no idea what any of that meant because I wasn't in student governance when I was at TUSPM. So I didn't really I didn't know what PPMA meant. I didn't really know what it entailed, how many meetings and things like that. But I went to the PPMA House of Delegates as a guest, and then I became a delegate to PPMA. Eventually ended up being president of PPMA. So was able to work myself through that organization. And I think through that, the connections that you make and then going to APMA and then, meeting people from the boards and, just the more connections and the more dialogue that I had at these meetings with other professionals, especially women, help promote me to, hey, you should sit on this board, or hey, we have an opening here. Would you be interested in this? And that's how I got on all of these boards, really. So PPMA was my first sort of like step into that world. And then just the connections and the opportunities from there got me the rest of these things.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm not a whole lot more to add, just so that we can continue to move through the conversation. But I'll say what was interesting for my own career. I had the opportunity as a resident to have female co-residents, one of which is one of the people that I'll speak about as far as a leader in the world of medicine. But what was interesting is almost all of my faculty, there were only a couple women out of all of the attendings that we had, and they were such powerful allies and excellent sponsors to help feel what your worth is and to promote opportunities, open those doors. But it was interesting to still have so much imposter syndrome that I felt like I had to overachieve just to be even remotely qualified for the things that they had recommended. And it's interesting, as I now have looked at females for various different positions and lots of different roles, students also being one of those, how ridiculously overqualified our females are. And it really does, I think, attest to this concept that as a woman, it has been well described. We are more likely to underplay our achievements and compare ourselves to what we see as someone else's strengths, despite the fact that the resumes may look the same, or the resumes still may be weighted way in our favor, But there is this sense of I have to prove that I'm just as good, that I've earned the right to be here. And it's funny to watch that shifting, I think, a little bit. And I'm excited with some of the things where we're going to go today, because I think that's actually a really exciting moment right now. We are seeing more women in these roles. And I think that will help our young women feel more empowerment to connect with them. And hopefully they won't have the same need to maybe over prepare. And whether there was definitely institutional biases that were there, and I want to make sure that I acknowledge that. But I also think it's really fair to acknowledge that I also carried my own biases that I don't want to say held me back, but certainly made me hesitant to reach out more or make myself more available, as Lily was saying. And so I think, ways that we can improve opportunities in leadership really center around feeling that worth. And it's okay to acknowledge, I don't know if I feel like I'm ready, but reaching out to the people that do empower you, whether they're male or female, to help you have whatever boost you need to step into those roles. Because we've watched women just excel in these leadership opportunities. And I think part of the reason that we're finally seeing it take off is we're seeing enough other people do it that we don't have to be alone in that experience.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't think I could have said it better myself, except that I almost mirror Sabrina's, journey into leadership. I started at NJPMS. My first year, somebody said, "Oh, we have a division meeting. You should go." Immediately, I started going and understood that there's a larger community besides just my practice. That community, unfortunately, was probably 20, 25 years my senior, mostly men. I would say probably 2 out of 10 would be female, maybe 20% were female who came to these meetings. And like you said, Joe, most of the time, if I wanted to say something, I would hesitate. And I'd say, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't have enough. I don't know enough. And I think the thing that you're alluding to is where you actually make that click where get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Most of these moments are uncomfortable. I walked into a boardroom where now I think I was vice president of the NJPMS and going to be the youngest female and only South Asian president of NJPMS, okay, ever in the 107-year history. You walk into that room and no one looks like you. No one sounds like you. They don't have the lived experiences as you, right? Maybe a handful of women there, but certainly very different from where, I have a highly surgical practice. I take a ton of call, just very different than what I was doing. And I remember feeling uncomfortable. Like, what am I doing? Is this really happening right now? And part of me just said, yes, it is. And now we just have to sit in it. And I think part of our fear that stops us besides imposter syndrome, because we all kind of suffer, and I put it in quotes because we are no imposters, right? There's plenty of things that are on our CVs that show the opposite of that. Across leadership, across every single industry. Historically, you see the research shows that a CEO that's a female is going to run that company better. And that's not me being biased. That's fact, right? That's just what happens. So part of that, I kind of adopted that into my own mindset of how do I make it so that I'm not so uncomfortable and that if I don't ask, I will never get, right? And one of the things as females, and one of the anecdotal things I always say is when I first came into all these, different roles at NJPMS or other, organizations that I work with, I didn't want to make myself stand out. And I don't know why, right? And part of me was like, if I could just blend in the background, maybe I'll just make a small difference. And then I'm like, wait, there are people who are significantly less qualified saying a significant amount more than I am. And I just got to put it together. So I walked in one day and I say this to every single female I mentor, put on the red lipstick, really overt. And I brought myself out there. I said, this is what I look like. Take it or leave it. This is what I'm qualified to say and do. And this is my action plan. And I ran with it. And from that day, it was like, this is what we're going to do because we're going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to get through it. So as far as you mentioned something about sponsorship, right? I love that word because we always talk about mentorship, right? But sponsorship is probably the more important thing. I mentor lots of people, but I've had a handful of sponsors in my lifetime that have brought opportunities to me that are above and beyond anything I could have ever imagined, right? I would love to go down that as far as mentorship and sort of our younger generation. When we talk about that, we're really just talking about career development, right? in your careers, how important was mentorship in your own career? And then what can we do to sort of continue that along with for women who are entering podiatry today? And then, Joe, I would love for you to talk about sponsorship if there's a particular person or someone who advocated for you and who that was.
I can certainly jump on the sponsorship one just because it was the latter rather than the former, so it's easy to stay with that line of thought. So Graham Hamilton was the one who opened the door and invited me to become part of the AO faculty when AO was coming back to the podiatrist community. And, Graham is so funny because he says the statement, Joe, I only opened the door. And he is accurate in that, right? But it wasn't just that. He vouched for me. He said, this is someone who deserves to be in this room. And that's more than just opening a door. We need people to open doors for sure. But then we need someone to also kind of be behind our back and continue to help us feel capable to keep stepping through it. And it has been such a wonderful opportunity to be in a role. I mean, in that very first meeting, there were literally 2 out of like 35 of us that were women. It was me and Christy King. And in that moment, again, Christy has always been she was my co-resident. So one of the people that I was talking about as a female mentor, even though she's my we're the same age and training level of, however you want to look at it. But I learned so much from her on such a consistent basis. And having someone to help you feel what your worth is and then publicly defend that to other people. Defend is kind of a dramatic word, but acclaim it, I guess. I'm not sure what the better word would be, but to publicly vouch for you and say, yes, this is someone. And then, yeah, I have to show up and I have to do the work and I have to also live up to that expectation. And that's on me. But I didn't even get the chance if I wasn't invited into the room to begin with. And so that's when I think of sponsorship versus mentorship. And certainly Graham's been a huge mentor as well. And I may have a story that we'll talk about later if we get to it. But other mentors, Jack Schuberth and Lawrence Ford, were massively influential to my career in a very different way than Graham was, and much more in what I would say a mentor kind of role. So I'll stop there so that we pass the ball on to someone else about mentorship.
I think for me, it started from way back when I was at Barry in podiatry school and, somebody encouraging me to be like, okay, hey, take a leadership role. For me, it was Dr. Armstrong back then. He was our radiology professor. Then he became the dean of the school. And, he was always so encouraging as to, hey, you have the qualities. Do you want to be a president for this organization and that organization? Things that I would have never even thought about stepping up to. So just having that encouragement and somebody vouching for you, like you said, Joe, is amazing and it's important. And then as I evolved and kind of got into practice and practicing, of course, you always need that kind of voice of reason. For me, it wasn't just career. It was, okay, I want somebody who I kind of line up with as far as their values. I admire the way they're practicing and they're kind of expanding their career, not only as far as, their private practice or their job, but also how they're helping others, treating, residents, students, and kind of seeing that, okay, that's an avenue that I want to explore. Even to this day, it kind of changes, right? As you evolve and as you go through your career, there's a person for every step. It's kind of like relationships, I think. You have a person for every stage you go through, they say. And I think it's the same thing with your career. For not too long ago, you're in private practice, and I'm sure you experienced that at Krupa. Like, there's a lot of people, everybody's selling to private equity and joining hospitals, and private practice is dead. And, when you go to a lot of these society meetings, that's a lot of negative that you're hearing. And so I was kind of getting down on myself. Do I need to sell my private practice? And Dr. Harkless was the one who was like, no, you just, stay the course, Lilly, stay the course, and yeah, so somebody sponsoring you to join things as, organizations and kind of helping you figure out that path. Sometimes those doors need to be open for you. And it's amazing the doors that you open that you're not even expecting or thinking about. And it's just through opportunity, through mentorship, through talking to people, getting to know people, meeting people at organizations. So it's not always the most famous person in podiatry that needs to be your mentor. somebody you admire and you look up to.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what we all go through, right? Even if it's the most insignificant thing or action, that it's a person, someone who remembers your name, asks you how you're
Mhm.
doing. All of a sudden, you're like, "Wow, I'm actually here."
Yeah.
Did you see it? Did you have anything to add to that one, Sabrina, about mentorship?
I mean, I think that Lily and Joe really nailed a lot of the key points and very much shadow having mentors that were professionally in podiatry that, got me involved. And then on the state level, the executive director at the time, Mr. Michael Davis, who's an attorney, he was the ED for Pennsylvania. He put me into everything. My very first year on the board, I was at the APMA House of Delegates. The only female of our delegation that was there, may have been one other female actually, but I was definitely the youngest, like you said, a lot younger than everybody else. And Pennsylvania had a lot of propositions and they put me forward and I spoke in front of everyone in that House of Delegates, in front of that entire room, and I was terrified. And Dr. Joe Pasquino on our board pretty much just took me aside, told me about everyone in the room and what I should expect, what I shouldn't. He checked in on me several times during that weekend and then after that as well, just to make sure that I understood the intricacies of all these different meetings I was going to and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I appreciated that more than anything. And then as I got into the school, it was amazing because I became an advisor for a lot of different student clubs, including the AAWP club. And it holds a place close to my heart because I'm an AAWP member, but those students are just amazing. And they were looking for mentorship opportunity. And just at this point in my career, going back and hearing them and all the questions that they had, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish that I had somebody in this position that would have helped me at that point or answered these questions because these are all the same questions that I had and I had to kind of figure it out, right? So it's been amazing working with the students and being a mentor for them and then helping them find mentors, do you know anyone that practices in this kind of area? Because I'm looking to go back up there. Or do you know anyone that really likes sports medicine? I think I want to go into that field. So, or into that specialty. So yeah, it's been wonderful. And just like you guys said, meeting people, going to these things, going to these conferences, going to as many organizational meetings as I can. I've met a lot of people. And now I'm able to spread the love and share those great contacts. Like Lily said, doesn't have to be the most popular podiatrist out there, but at least I'm able to share these really great contacts with this next generation of students. And then, just being at the school and witnessing it. I mean, I always joke that I'm sort of like one of the newer people at the school. So I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I always joke and say that, but watching the female leaders above me is amazing. Like watching Leslie Robinson, Dr. Robinson do what she does at that school is just amazing. So not only am I able to mentor, but I also get to see it firsthand and seeing all these great leadership female leaders at Temple University in general, through the faculty senate committee that I'm on. It's just so eye-opening and amazing that even at this point I can mentor, yet I'm still being mentored and I'm still being sponsored. So I think that's a really important point as well.
What advice would you give a student or a resident who is looking for a mentor? I'll share my advice that I say is if you don't ask, the answer is no, right?
Mhm.
I think that's probably my best advice to my residents is you never know. And you can get 3 no's and you can get 1 really good yes. And that relationship can last, your entire career. Where do you think, what would you tell your residents if you work with them now? Where would they find mentors?
I tell them to find someone they want to emulate. I think it's important to recognize not everyone wants to be a mentor, or they want to, but they may have limited time. But it doesn't have to be a huge time investment. But I think I love your point. Like the worst thing that could happen is they say no. But if you never ask, then it's 100% that it's a no. And worst case scenario, they say yes, and then it kind of just never materializes. It's
Mhm.
not that with people that I thought, oh, I would love to have this person as a mentor, and you kind of reach out and it just kind of fizzles. It just doesn't go anywhere. And it's not, it's just, we don't know what the other person is dealing with in those moments of their life, what phase of life that they're in, the other constraints on their time. And so some people will invest in that relationship, and others, maybe it's just the timing. Maybe it is kind of a personality thing and it just doesn't mesh, and that's okay. Move on to the next one. And just to your point, just ask, because there's no harm in asking. No one's going to yell at you and be really rude. That's just not going to happen. So
And if they did, that's not a mentor you want anyway, right?
exactly.
That's not someone I want to take advice from. That's for sure. Any other
Yeah.
tips that you guys could offer or about the same?
I think you just need to ask questions. A lot of people kind of get scared off by the word mentorship and, you ask them, hey, can you be my mentor? And well, I don't know what I have to offer, but I think it's just opening the door and being interested in asking the questions, and the other person may find themselves that, okay, I'm actually helping, the student, resident, anything that may be. And I think it's, yeah, about asking the questions and just opening that door, letting the other person get comfortable with you as much as you need to get comfortable with them, and really showing them that, okay, I like the way you're doing things. I kind of want, I want to learn from you. And a lot of people take that as a compliment and they want to help. Yeah, I think it's just about asking questions. I 100% agree.
Sabrina?
Oh, I agree. Only one quick comment I'll add is if the mentor that a student or a resident or even a practicing attending reaches out to doesn't have time, a lot of times that person will say, you know what, thank you, I don't have the time, but I know A, B, and C person that would be very interested. So like, don't always worry about getting the no, especially from someone who you think may be too busy or something, because they may have contacts that they can get you involved with as well for a mentor.
Yeah, one of the things I will say is that, having more women being front line, right? Front center, we know that we're here, we're not going anywhere, we're running practices, we're doing surgeries, we're doing all the things. Over the last couple of years, I've been able to create a mentorship program through industry sponsored. So that has been amazing because that has a really, really large reach of, to residents all over the country. And we can get probably 40 to 60 residents in a calendar year, all female, not biased, but it's a women in podiatry mentorship. Industry is noticing. So they know, right? Women make up 50 to 55% of podiatry. This is who you're selling to, right? It's an idea that you can pitch. You meet reps who come into your office every day. Use this, use that. What are you doing to support us in this career path that we've taken? Because that's a really big power move, right? If we are your clients, let's take advantage of that. And the bigger thing is that having a bunch of younger residents who know the faces now, right, can connect with you at a live meeting, and then come around and have that ability to sort of break that door open where I already have Dr. Patel's email address. Let me just shoot her an email, let her look at my contract and, tell me what she thinks. Those are the opportunities that I think that are huge and are going to continue to happen, particularly in the industry side. I just want to shift gears a little bit because, we're doing this call really because it's Women's History Month, right? And we want to acknowledge that women have made and taken huge strides, right, to move forward in medicine and healthcare and podiatry. But every career path does have its challenges, right? We know this. There are certain things that are very specific challenges that happen with women, right? Particularly balancing family responsibilities, navigating these leadership pathways, or finding support systems. What kind of challenges have you encountered in your career and how did you overcome them? I'll start
I
with
can
Lilly.
start that one, sure. Yes, that's definitely, I think, one of the most challenging parts, finding that balance, not only between work and, personal life, kids, family, but also finding the time to take care of yourself. I think that's where a lot of us kind of struggle. We are givers. We like to take care of people, whether that be our patients, our employees, our students, our kids, and that leaves very little room for ourselves at the end of the day. And for me, it's definitely still it's an ongoing learning process. It's definitely a balancing act. And, initially when I was starting out, it was about, yes, finding your place, finding my place, getting doors that are, open for me and taking on leadership positions. And I still enjoy all of that, but I found myself just saying yes to everything, absolutely everything, and not knowing how to say no. I would just get excited by the offer, or you get to go to this, course, learn this and learn that, go teach this lecture here. At the end of the day, it was like, okay, I was either missing out time with my kids because I was traveling, and it was, you were one place but wanting to be in another. So for me, it was about really prioritizing, learning how to prioritize of, okay, what really fulfills me and gives me that at the end of the day, like gives me that fulfillment, not because I'm doing it for somebody else, not because such and such company that's like amazing asked me to do it, but does that line up with my value and what I'm trying to achieve? Same thing with the office, learning how to kind of balance my schedule where I'm able to pick up my kids from school and go to a soccer game, right? And you can't do it always, and learning how to forgive yourself for times that you can't. But really, you have to learn how to protect your energy. It's always going to be challenging. It's never going to be a win-win, but just learning to prioritize at what time is what is the most important thing that you're trying to achieve. And I think that's been the kind of the one thing that I've been learning to say no a little more to prevent my own burnout.
What do you think, Joe? Anything that you
Oh
would
man, no, like I could talk about this for like hours, right?
Exactly.
So like I love everything that you just said right there, Lily, because the most important thing that again, I'll take eye ownership right now, but I think this is a common female ailment. We live to other people's standards of us. And
Mhm.
it's so easy to get wrapped up in what this version of success should look like based off of somebody else's predefined judgment of what they want success to look like. But what do I want success to look like? What does that look like to me? And once you start getting clarity on what that really looks like, letting go, and this is an active process, so I have no like space to make it sound like I have this figured out because I am actively in the process of refining right now because I said yes again to way too many things. But once you figure out what the clarity is of what your version of success looks like, unapologetically letting go of all the other things that don't matter, that just like you said, they don't align with where I want to go, that's important for me, my family, my career, your outside hobbies, whatever your interest and your area of this is what matters to me, and if I can do this or this, I'm successful in my mind, then lean all in. Go all in. Don't let anybody stop you. And find grace with yourself because
Mhm.
I go through these oscillations where like I get really clear about exactly how I want things to go. I start lining all the dominoes up and we're cruising. And I have this probably ADHD component of myself that I start to kind of get a little bored where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need more things to
Mhm.
do. So you slowly start to say yes because you're like, I do have time to take that on. And then suddenly this is how opportunities work, right? This opportunity parlays into this other one. And then all of a sudden, everything's coming due all at the same time again. This is also a little bit in the academic world. There are some interesting, I love your take on this, Sabrina, some interesting oscillations in terms of really busy times and then some less
Yes.
busy times and trying to figure out how to make those blocks line up. Yeah, I'm still a work in progress with all of these things, but clarity and grace are overwhelmingly the advice that I would give is don't feel bad about living your version of success because when you know what you want and you build your life around that, again, I'm going to say this out loud, I'm not good at this, letting go of what other people think about it, really just it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
preach, Joe?
Mic drop.
That's all I can say. Go ahead, Sabrina.
No, I totally agree. I think that Lily and Joe they nailed it. I mean, these are all things that women especially, they take these extra stresses upon themselves. We all do, right? We don't want to say no. We don't want to be the bad guy in the room. And whether that's
Mhm.
like in your private practice to a patient or whether that's to, you know, an organization or to an employer, you don't want to be the bad guy. If someone asks you to do something, we've always been taught you always say yes, right? We're taught that from when we go on our residency externs that if someone asks you to do something, you do the extra step, you go the extra mile. And then it's like ingrained in ourselves for the rest of our careers. So I agree completely. Like, it was really, really hard for me to say no to things. I would say yes, 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 yes. And then my husband would be like, why are you doing all of these things? You don't have time to do the things you actually want to do. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? Interestingly, you have a point. So I did start to kind of take a step back and just look at the big picture, like Lily and Joe had mentioned, like, what are my goals? What do I want to do? And what do I realistically have time for? And Joe, I agree with you completely. It ebbs and flows in academia. And there's some like a couple of months in a row where I'm like, you know what? I do have a little bit more time. My classes have calmed down. I think I can do a little bit more. And then you're right. As soon as you take on that extra opportunity, it snowballs into like 10 other things that end up coming back into the time that you don't have anymore. So yeah, it's just a constant matter of adjustment. But I think that some of that comes with a little bit of like age, like a little bit of more years in practice. I learned to say no. I didn't learn to do that early on when I was in practice. And if that's something I would tell my younger self is don't overdo it. You know, give yourself grace and you're not disappointing anybody if you say no. That's really important.
I love to
And
see.
even if you do, even if you
Yeah,
disappoint them, it's not about them, right?
exactly. You're not
Because
disappointing
every yes
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, every yes is inherently a no to something else.
Yeah.
So like, oh, I don't want to disappoint this organization, but like, sorry, kid, can't come to your soccer game. And I know that really matters to you, but like,
Yeah.
mommy keeps having these meetings that like,
Exactly.
that matters more to me. And I don't want to I don't want to keep disappointing them because at some point that was part of how it, again, the things that you, again, I'll take ownership over this. The things that I started to feel obliged to say yes to, that then I started saying no to the people that mattered the most. And suddenly you're like, if this is where I rate my priorities, but this is where I'm actually spending my time, like these are not in alignment. And like, that's on me. I really need
Exactly.
to do the work
And
to
that
figure
makes you
out how to
really
bring them
think.
back.
Yeah, it makes you think
It
about the
does.
decisions you're making. And kids are, yes, when they put you in your place, but you weren't here last week either. You're going to another conference, you know. And I think it's harder early in your career to say no to things because you're trying to grow, you're trying to prove yourself and get
Exactly.
those doors open to you. So I don't think by any means that comes early on, right when you're starting your career. But knowing what your big picture is, what you want your life to look like, I think, and what the ultimate end goal is, I think it's important and kind of working towards that. And like you said, Sabrina, as you age, the more you practice and the more freedom you have, then working towards that goal and be like, okay, this is my version of success. This is what I want. So yes, absolutely.
You
Yes,
know,
I
I
agree
love
completely.
yeah, I love everything you guys are saying, but it's so funny because I think we have very shared similar experiences. You know, early in the career, yes, 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 I'll do it all. No worries, I can do it. I can do it. Yeah, one of the big things that happened with me is, whenever I said no, I'd have this crazy feeling that no one's ever going to find me or call me or think about me again. That FOMO, that social media, looking at everybody with perfectly curated pictures, x-rays being posted every day and all the different surgeries they're doing, despite me doing the same surgeries, but just not putting them anywhere. It created this situation where it was very hard to disconnect on what my mission was, defined success as, and what those priorities were for me. But when I had my boys, my sons, the biggest thing I realized, and I say this and everybody's going to agree, is that the time just goes so fast. I remember my son being this big and now he's my height and 11 years old and I don't know where that went. And part of me would have been very, very disappointed in myself if I missed a lot of the moments. Early on when I first had them, I went back to work 7 weeks postpartum for the first one and then 11 weeks for the second. Clearly not enough time. I remember walking back into the office. It was April 1st, 2015. It was my first day back and I felt like someone had cut my arm off. Literally felt I couldn't breathe. It's how overwhelmingly, you know, just upset I was that I left my child at home. And I think that was one of the big moments in my life where the trajectory changed. This is the priority. And you're talking about challenges, right? This is from a couple who went through IVF, infertility issues, fought hard to have these kids. And now I'm leaving the house at 7 weeks. And this baby
Yeah.
is now home with the grandmother and my husband. And I'm watching on the camera, talking. They disconnected. Crazy, right? I think as women, those are the things that the people don't see, right? We show up polished, everything's put together, but the background is all of
You
this
don't
other
see.
right? These challenges that are very particular and specific to only women, who are childbearing age in a relationship with a partner, husband, whatever it may be. But how do you get through that? How do you navigate? Do you have a support system? Are there girlfriends that you can talk to? Because time is one of those things. There's some friends I haven't seen in months that I used to see all the time. What do you guys do in order to navigate some of those really serious life challenges, right? As we kind of move on to the next step, which is going to be sort of elder care as our parents age. Now we're worried about caring for them. There's a lot of things that are going to shift. So what do you think is kind of the way that you get through this?
Definitely through friends. I'm an older mom, so my life kind of changed. I, started over. I was in a relationship that I thought was going to be my forever. It wasn't. I graduated from residency. I was kind of starting over again. So I'm an older mom. I have a little guy. He's almost 3.5. And so I had him during the COVID, right after COVID period. So talk about having to, like, I was terrified to put him in daycare or something like that. We were supposed to have help. It didn't end up working out. And I ended up taking 10 months off. Did I expect to? No. I expected to take 6 weeks off. It ended up being 10 months off because, like you said, Krupa, I was terrified. It's like losing a part of you when they're that young. And anyone told me this prior to me having this child, I would not have believed it.
Never.
I would have been like, you know what? My personality is different, blah, blah, blah. I'll be fine. Let me tell you, I eat my thoughts and my words about everything before having a child. But yeah, I would not have gotten through any of that period without my friends and my sister. Like, you need to have, and this is something I tell the students all the time, find your people. You know, your classmates may not be your people throughout the next 4 years, but have people in your life that are going to be stable and get you through these periods that are going to be tough in your life. So for me, it was definitely having my friends, being able to text them during the night when I was awake with my baby, like 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. Like, you guys know this, right? You're awake at all times. And having someone when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed that you can just send a quick text to or whatever and can just answer and talk to you and like kind of talk you down from your crazy, which, you know, I get sometimes. So that's really important. And just having like a support system, whether it's family, if you have family close by, if you're lucky enough to, you know, close friends or someone that you can have that you can kind of be a little bit more yourself to and not a little bit more vulnerable to and not worry about having to put on this perfect persona that you put on for the rest of the world. I think to me, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, that's one of the reasons I went into private practice was having kids and realizing, hey, I want to be able to control my schedule better. And, you know, and absolutely the support system, you know, having somebody there to talk to, those girls' dinners once a month, they have to be on my calendar. It's just like an outlet, right? But after COVID, I went through divorce. And at the same time, I had just opened a practice like right before COVID. So I had to make sure my practice stays open while figuring out how to navigate divorce while trying to raise kids, at the same time showing up every day and putting on that face that, hey, everything is great. Like, we are peachy. But internally, you're just like in pieces. So for me at that time, it was talking to someone. For me, she's a business life coach that was supposed to help me build my practice. But going through this, she pretty much became my personal therapist. I mean, at a point, I was talking to her twice a week, and that was my outlet. That was me talking to someone to just kind of vent and get it all out of my system so that I can kind of put it up with all the other aspects and show up for my employees, for the patients, for the kids. There's always going to be life challenges, and you have to figure out how to take care of yourself so you can keep showing up, or you're just going to drop the ball if you don't take care of yourself.
You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Definitely not.
And this is where, yeah, and like all the cliches, they're so true though, right? Like, you can't take care of someone if you are the one that needs the taking care of. And we wouldn't expect someone to run a marathon of a broken leg. Like, why are we expecting us to carry the kind of mental load without having someone to share that with? And that can be, I'm a giant advocate of therapy. And if nothing else, is just a third party objective person to hear me like emotionally dump all this stuff out. Because bless my husband, he's amazing, but he doesn't really want to hear it. Like, he wants to hear it because he loves and supports me, but it is just unfair for me to come home and like unload sometimes, right? For things that have no impact on him. And he's absorbing all this emotional stress. Like, that's probably not the best time of our relationship together. Is like, here, let me just unload all this crazy nonsense from this insurance company that I dealt with today. Like, okay, right? So I think this is also what's wonderful about women. And I love my male colleagues, but I would not have these conversations. Like, you just can't have the same. And it's not that they're not supported. These were dads and fathers and husbands and the whole bit, right? But there is a distinct acknowledgement we should recognize that we are different as men and women.
Yes.
And
100%.
you know, not to keep adding too much in, because I think we all have the exact same experience with the children thing. I wanted kids so bad, and surprised they were. I thought it was going to take a lot longer to figure that pathway out, and for us it did not. But I will be totally transparent. I did not have a great maternity experience, in the sense that like I wasn't ready to go back to work, but I was ready to go back to work. Like, I was so overwhelmed because I was a little bit of an older mom as well. I mean, I was technically a geriatric mom, and I had no problem with that. But this was a completely different kind of, this little human literally needs me for everything. And what I did not realize at the time, that I wish, now knowing what I know, I wish I would have just indulged in the moment a little bit more,
Yep.
It's not always going to be that way. So like every phase of life has these overwhelming moments. Like my kids are 8 and 10 now, and we are going through a moment right now of new emotional overwhelm. Like there's new things that are happening, but it's so, and maybe this is what, wisdom comes with age, right? Maybe now just having that perspective, like what they're managing is important. And it feels hard and overwhelming for me because we're doing all these things, but it's not always going to be like this. So yeah, I'm going to say no to that. Thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this committee, organization, class, whatever. But my kids need me to be home to do this thing. And that was a sacrifice I did not recognize pre-kids. I looked at it as like, oh, you're sacrificing your career. And that's just not it. I don't want to sacrifice them in these moments that it's only going to be this moment and this. Yeah, like I recognize now. So I lost my mom during COVID. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
She died from COVID, and it was beautiful and terrible all in the same breath, right? Beautiful in the sense that she didn't suffer for very long because of the way that things happened for her, but terrible in the sense that there's no planning for that. My kids were really little. I was in a private practice and everything felt just
Crushing, I'm sure.
suffocating. Yeah. And I remember having that moment of just like instant clarity. None of it matters. Everything matters and none of it matters. So what do you want to look back on? Because you just kind of missed these last 3 to 4 years of just constantly saying yes to the things that you think matter. What do you want to look back on and say actually mattered? And that's when I started to really pivot and lean into the educational arm of what we do. And I absolutely love what I do. It was what I needed to put me into the path that I'm in. But to go through those growth moments and to feel like you have to do it alone, the more I've opened up to other women and like Lilly, hearing your story, like I just want to hug you right now. That all of those things that you took
Right
on,
back at you.
right? Like, and we're all learning to be friends right now, but like you instantly know what I'm talking about in all of that guilt on both what am I leaving behind for my patients that are in the hospital that need my expertise? And yet these little people at home that just went through something traumatic that I'm also as a daughter going through that's traumatic, that's affecting my husband because he's also going through it. Where do we figure out how to manage this? And so again, therapy is wonderful. Having someone to talk to work through some of that. This is why having women in medicine and represented in leadership and organizations and schools and residency programs, this is why it matters. And it matters to the people that need that representation because we see the best parts of ourselves reflected in other people. And so when we see, oh, but you know what, they can do it. It's not just like, oh, but they can do it and I can't. It's they can do it. They got through it. And so I know that I can try to get through it too. And maybe I'll reach out to, which I'm learning now. I'm going to reach out to them. So now, Lilly, we're going to become best friends. Like, I'm going to lean on you and you lean on me. And I make the joke now, like I go to meetings and we just have I have a whole text group of people. The more you share these vulnerable moments now coming on this side of it, I mean, that was let's see, it was 4 years ago that mom passed. Now I still obviously am emotional about it, but like I'm in such a better place now than 4 years ago. So when I talk to people that are going through something hard right now, I'm going to be that person where I'm like, hey, I just wanted to say hi. Here's a funny meme. Here's a joke, or here's something that I saw and I just thought of you. And connecting people to other people that are going through these things, we need to support each other. And this is what women do better than anybody. So now I'm going to stop talking.
Oh my God,
I
don't.
love it.
I think we're all about 2 seconds away from tearing up, and
I'm already there.
I am.
I was crying.
I've gotten better at not ugly crying too bad.
No,
So, it's just,
well, I think the biggest takeaway is, the vulnerability of just sharing a story like that is not anything that a man would do on earth, right? That no man on earth would do that because sharing vulnerability is often seen as weakness, right? For me, and I say this across the board, is when you're vulnerable is when you're real, right? That authentic self of your lived experiences and sharing that and hoping that someone can resonate. That's that secret sauce. People always wonder, how do you keep your practice so busy? How come patients keep coming back to you? It's because I'm authentic, I'm vulnerable, I can empathize, I can understand, I can put myself in your shoes and really feel what you're feeling. I think, in honor of your mom, who I think sent you that moment of clarity directly, Women's History Month, This is what sets us apart. This is why these conversations happen. And I don't care if you don't want to be my best friend, I'll be your best friend.
Be your best friend. Yeah.
And best friend, but with that being said, I think it's just so important, right? Because you think about burnout, right? And you think about being in this corner by yourself. Again, post-pregnancy, I had postpartum depression. It was horrible, right? Like, horrible. I looked at my son one day and I just said, I have to put him down because I don't know what else to do, right?
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
a type A surgeon personality who can fix
Yeah.
things.
I can't fix it.
Can't fix this, right? And they give you this level of humility where the medicine actually becomes easier because you bring that to your job. You bring that every day and you bring these lived experiences. And I think you do better as a human being. You do better as a physician. And that's why our outcomes are better. And that's not just me boasting. That is the literature that shows that, a female surgeon has better outcomes than most of their male counterparts. I can give you references. Now, I think getting back to sort of where our roundtable was going, I mean, this was phenomenal. And I hope that, we can do this again and maybe do another episode with some more deep dives into sort of the big struggles, things that women can and only women can talk about, particularly when we talk about maternity, right?
Yeah.
Going into practice, you're coming out of residency. When I was a resident, and I share this story often, so apologize if you've heard this already, a potential employer, all male group, said to me directly, we would hire you in a heartbeat if we knew you were sterile, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, so maybe this is not the group for me, but also we're not talking about a tremendous amount of time. This was about 19 years ago, right? Or 17 years ago. That's not a long time ago. Someone who could say that directly to you, that you would hire me because you think, now you've made many assumptions that, one, I would work until I had a child and then never work again, right? That would be my only priority. Now that may be the case, right? Like Sabrina said, you took 10 months. I wish I took 10 months, right?
Yeah.
Now, to ask if I was sterile, wild, right? For me, when I became a partner or, got my first contract, I asked for a maternity leave in the contract. And that was one of the things that they looked at me like I had two heads. And I said, I don't understand. What's the problem? And it occurred to me they never had a female partner. So why would they even know to do that? And when I said, well, no, I want it in the contract, they said, well, of course, we're going to let you take time off if you have a baby. And I said, yeah, we're going to put that in the contract, right? Because what are we talking about?
Why not?
Why would we not, right? And funny thing is, even to this day, this is like 2026, I still see people's contracts that don't have anything about maternity. And we've come so far, but we have so much more to do, And I think the best way to do that is sharing our stories and being vulnerable and being open and making sure that the conversation continues. I just want to close out by saying thank you guys so much for sharing your insights and your experiences today. As we recognize Women's History Month, it's really important for us to acknowledge the many ways that women have shaped and continue to shape the field of podiatry. Through leadership, mentorship, innovation, dedication to patient care, women are helping strengthen our profession and helping to inspire the next generation of physicians. On behalf of PICA and the Insured Connection, thank you so much for joining us for this special Women in Podiatry Roundtable. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
And that's it for this week's episode. But let's continue connecting. If you're enjoying the Insured Connection, don't forget to leave a review on your streaming platform and subscribe now so you can connect with us each time we post a new episode. To stay connected with us throughout the week and to tell us topics we should discuss on future episodes, go to picagroup.com/insuredconnection.